Thank you all for joining me today. We're going to talk about getting ahead virtual, I should say, and helping to give ideas, sharing experiences, providing opportunities to learn more about how getting ahead has been done virtually during COVID-19. So we'll have 3 different stories to share today. Treasure, Mackenzie in Muskogee, Oklahoma is going to start us off. So Treasure, if you would please share your information, we'd love to hear what's happening in Muskogee.
Yes, of course. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. So I am Treasure Mackenzie, the director of Muskogee Bridges Out of Poverty in Muskogee, Oklahoma. And I want to just share with you how our community and Bridges program decided to continue with getting ahead classes when the pandemic started in March, and some of the decisions that we had to make to be able to do that successfully. And so at the time when things kind of started shutting down, we were already 8 sessions in to our 20 weeks of classes and had to make some quick decisions. We were already familiar with the platform of Zoom, and so we decided to take our next class online. We had a lot of questions, a lot of worries, and one of the questions was, can we figure out Zoom? Will our investigators have smartphones, devices that they can use? And it turns out, yes, to both of those. We were able to figure out Zoom. We were able to make sure everyone had a smartphone or a tablet. Some people even had a school-issued laptop that they were using, maybe their children had assigned to them, and they were able to use those. The next question was, does everyone have access to Wi-Fi or enough minutes on their plan to be able to do a class online? And it turns out that our investigators are amazing problem solvers, and they were able to each figure out a solution. And so some of our investigators had to get in their car and drive to McDonald's and use the Wi-Fi in the parking lot. Some used a local church and used the Wi-Fi there, or the library. So people were really creative, and they were able to figure out how to use their device, get online, and be able to Zoom into our meetings. Another question we had was, would our investigators stay committed? You know, they had gone through these 8 weeks, they had bonded as a class, and so we were worried about, once we went online, would we lose that personal touch? And the answer, for us at least, was no. We didn't lose any of our investigators through the class. So some decisions that we had to make: we are fortunate enough to have a paid childcare staff, and we knew at that time we would have to essentially lay those childcare workers off for the rest of the semester, which was unfortunate, but most of those people are teachers who this was their secondary side hustle job. And meals, we had a food team. We were cooking for around 120 people every Tuesday night. We decided to no longer do meals, partly for safety, others because our food team that cooks the food was made up of graduates, and some of them, 2 of them, are cancer survivors, and we didn't feel it was safe the way we had it set up, so we were no longer doing meals. Our staff while we were familiar with Zoom, we had to then turn around and kind of learn how to do Zoom techniques and make sure that everybody was comfortable, and being the presenter, and making sure that we could teach the investigators how to raise their hand, how to mute themselves, things like that. And so we took a week or so to just get comfortable doing that. And another question we had was, how are we going to get our monthly gift cards, which is what we use for stipends, to our investigators? And it turns out we were able to do that very easily. We had them come to the office at the end of the month on Friday. We put their gift card in an envelope with their name on it. We opened the door and kind of slid it through the door to them, and it worked out just fine. So what were we worried about? We had a lot of worries at the beginning. How is this going to work, and is it going to be okay? And one of the first things we ran into was Zoom etiquette. Sometimes when a family is in the tyranny of the moment, there's a lot of things going on, there's some chaos, and now this is a whole new platform for them. And so with the Zoom etiquette, we had to create like a 1-page sheet of tips and tricks for Zoom. So if you are going to be in this class, don't have the phone propped up against the wall while you're washing dishes. Don't be cooking a meal. Don't be driving your kids somewhere while you're trying to do this class. We want your undivided attention for the whole class. And so you need to center the camera, center yourself in the camera, look directly at the camera while you're in class. Give us your full attention, and try your best to keep the camera still. Those kinds of things needed to be addressed, and keep yourself muted so we can minimize distractions in the background. So those things we've addressed in a one sheet. We go over it in the beginning. If we need to go over it again a few times throughout the class, we do. But for the most part, once we addressed those issues, they weren't an issue anymore. Future storyboard night was one of my concerns. At the end of our semester, we kind of throw a party and we have hundreds of magazines and we buy cardboard stand-up storyboards, and we have markers and scissors and glue, and we have music going and food, and we kind of have a party and everybody creates their future storyboard. And I was really thinking, oh man, how are we going to do this without the opportunity to do it in person? But it turns out the way we did it online was so much more effective. We asked them to create their future story in any format that they wanted. They could write a paragraph or a book if they wanted to. They could draw it on a piece of paper. They could create their own storyboard at home, but they would need to present it in front of the camera during the next class. And those presentations were phenomenal. They were so cool, and it worked out so much better than what we do in real life. So it actually turned out to be a great thing. I was worried about how we would do a graduation if we couldn't meet in person. And so at the time, we were hoping that the pandemic would be wrapping up by the time graduation started, and it really, in fact, didn't. And so we just didn't have an actual graduation. We celebrated online, and then we created little gift bags with a journal and a pen and some thank you cards and things inside of it, and asked them each to come and pick up their gift bag at the end of their class. And so there are different ways that different communities are celebrating across the nation, and it's really cool to see all the cool ideas that are coming. So in the next class, I think we're going to do something a little different, but we're not quite sure what yet. So my number one concern is relationships. Can a class truly bond online, not only halfway through, but when we start another class from the beginning? And the answer is absolutely. And so the facilitator sets the tone. If they are authentic and vulnerable, that will set the tone for the class. And the minute they become that way, everyone else seems to follow and will be much more open to sharing and their story and just being part of the class, and they do actually bond. Same opening and closing rituals plus hand gestures. So some of the same things we were doing in our regular Getting Ahead classes, we were able to continue online. At the beginning, we were able to talk about new and goods, talk about something new or good that happened to you this week, or list as some kind of change that you've gone through that was a positive change and how you were connected to it. That starts the meeting off on a positive note for everyone. At the end, we always do some kind of appreciation and gratitude. There's lots of different ways we can do that. Sometimes we'll just say, everybody say one word that describes the feeling you had about this class tonight, or what need of mine was met during this class tonight. And so ends on a good note as well. And then something we learned from Toledo, Ohio is hand gestures. If someone is telling a story or talking about something that I care about, or I want to show that I care and I am in solidarity with you and I just am sending you my love, you can easily do a hand gesture, and each class can have their own, but this means, hey, I'm not speaking because you're speaking, but I do care and I see you. And so little things like that can make a really big difference and really help them to bond as a class. And because we get to have a little window into your world because you're probably at home, we get to meet your family, we get to see your kids, we get to meet your pets, and that just adds a little bit more closeness to the whole group. So moving forward, we are about to start classes again in August, and this time we will go full virtual. And so we are doing our interviews on Zoom or on FaceTime. And that helps us to actually lay eyes on the person who is the applicant, get to really know them a little bit, ask them the questions in person. And if they aren't able to use Zoom or FaceTime, they may or probably aren't going to be able to do the class that way as well. So those have really helped us when we are trying to figure out who would be a good fit for the class this semester, knowing that it is all online. And the coolest new thing is that AHA Process is helping us by providing some new tools for online trainings. And so they are creating PowerPoint visuals for us that match the Getting Ahead books and fillable forms that we can send to them, and they can actually fill them out themselves and hit the submit button. And I'll show you what that looks like. So the PowerPoints kind of look like this. Now, of course, these the investigators have their book in front of them, and so they will be looking at these things, but just it's nice to have something on the screen to follow. things like this, the debt to income ratio, is just a chart that we use, and it's in their book as well. But as you're looking at this in the book, you can also point to things on your screen. And then you will come across a link. This is a link to a form that they've created for us, which takes the next activity online and is easy for everyone to do. So what you will do on the screen, you would click on this, and it will take, and you would actually get this link to your investigators, and it will take them to something that looks like this. So if you can see at the top, they write in their name, and then they write in their email. Underneath that, they will write in the email of their facilitator. And then you can go in and you can see that you can answer the questions. So this one just happens to be the debt to income ratio calculator, and they can fill this out. But there are many other forms like this. For instance, the assessments. They can do the assessments this way as well. And at the bottom, you can see there's a submit button, and they can submit this, and it will go email straight to your facilitator. And then from here, the facilitator can do what they want with that information. For us, we would then take this and put that directly into Charity Tracker. So it's making it so much easier to be able to connect with them online and get some of these things accomplished. So how do you get this information? Getting Ahead virtual webinar and e-forms are all available at AHA Process. Oh, I need to go back one so you can see it again. ahaprocess.com/GA virtual. That's where you can get this information. It's brand new. And of course, if you have any questions, you can contact Lynn Jackson at Bridges or at AHA Process, and she will be happy to help you. Here's her contact information, and I'm sure that you can get a hold of her and just by going to the AHA Process website as well. So Lynn, I'll throw it back to you.
Thank you, Treasure. Thanks for sharing your information about what's happening in Muskogee and what your future holds. And thank you again for sharing the contact information. One of the things that I was hoping to do with this webinar was to give you opportunity to hear from a couple of different places. So I would like to invite Kimberly and Tiffany from Pueblo, Colorado to come on. And they're going to share what's happening there in Pueblo with their Getting Ahead virtual.
Hi, Lynn.
Hello. Hi. So we would, as soon as March did come around and COVID did hit, we were in the middle of classes. We were about 8 weeks in also, so we had to hurry up and find a way to still stay connected to our classes. We did graduate 2 classes in June, so we were able to stay connected with Zoom. Currently we started 2 more classes in May that have graduated since then. We have 1 session right now in process, and then we'll have 3 more sessions in August that will be starting. We are continuing to plan virtually with them, as we're not seeing any difference in what's going on. So we are going full steam ahead for virtual. What we have done with our meals and of course our dinners, our meals and our gift cards, is we were able to use our childcare because they needed the income. And we use our childcare workers to be able to, we meet the families before class. So say our dinner is from 5 o'clock until 5:30 that we serve food. And so then at 5 to 5:30, our childcare workers show up. We have a restaurant that is catering. Usually it's grab and go food. We're talking wrapped individual hamburgers, wrapped individual hot dogs, like nice hot dogs with chips, hamburgers with some sort of a side and chips and like little cookies. Also some chicken sandwiches. So usually we're giving it per family, 8 burgers or 8 hot dogs. And then at the same time, we're giving the gift cards. We are practicing safe social distancing. We do have masks, we have gloves. And then this allows for the child care workers to welcome them, to see how they're doing, to wave to the kids. We have some kid activities we've given to the children as they went through the line. The advantage to this is we meet them where the meeting usually is. So we are based in schools, so we go to that school and hang out in the front of that school through the child care, the drive, and we distribute their food. This allows us to be able to have some conversation, Hi, how are you doing? Here's your gift card. Here's your meal. What they end up doing is they'll go and have their meal, and then on our night sessions, they are having class from 6:30 to 8:30 at night. This has just been beautiful. It's been a wonderful experience, and there is some part where people do not, especially people in poverty, that struggle with transportation. We work for a place that we cannot provide transportation. We don't have a bus or shuttle for them. So some of our families are really stuck at home, and this has been able to provide 100% attendance for them to come to class. I heard a comment the other day that says, wow, you know, I hear you guys are doing really good with attendance, and I hear some people even take the class in their car, or they're upstairs in a private bedroom, or I have a girl that she has like her husband watch the kids, and she sets up class in her bathroom, and because it's the quietest place in the house. And sometimes the kids will knock and be like, hi, mommy, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm in class. And it works. You meet them where they're at. We have started classes with the Department of Human Services. In fact, we have seen that need rise because there isn't so much that the Department of Human Services can have their TANF recipients or people that are on unemployment be able to do. So now, because physically, so now we have stepped up, and we're a tool, a resource for our Department of Human Services. So our referrals from there is really starting to just triple because they need places for their families to grow. And Kim, you have how many students in class right now as far as Department of Human Services?
I have 11 right now, and really good attendance, really good feedback from them. And a couple of them have even mentioned that they're glad it's virtual because it's just easier for them for transportation needs and things like that. So it's a really good class.
And the intimacy, I know that's a fear of how are we going to connect. And just like we heard earlier, the facilitator does lead that. We ask, how is everybody doing? How are you feeling during this time? What is some good things that's happening in your life? And it really, I've had tears in many of my classes. So the intimacy, the connection, my people really, the classes are really solidly connecting because I don't think there's that front. They're in a comfortable place. They're in their house. You get to meet their kids. Sometimes it's, you know, babies or their dogs, you know, the dog Fred, or, you know, hey, what's that picture behind you? You know, and they'll tell you, you know, they'll be like, so this is my mom. And so some of this connection is happening much easier. So I really feel that the relationships and the bonding is happening faster. And the groups are desiring to continue and to stay involved. One of the things that, of course, just even like what we have is when we switch over to something like Zoom, is to definitely have a session where you do a warm-up session, where you really coach people on how to get onto Zoom to make sure they have the connection. What I've done is I've sent out a pre-recorded Zoom where they at least can go in and they can review it and they can see it and make sure they can get it on. And then I even have contacts where I text everybody. I have texting, I have everybody's phone numbers. And I'm like, hey, where are you at? You know, what's your problem? You know, how can I help you? And really taking the time your first session to get everybody on and comfortable. Another thing that I find is I keep the same meeting number. So we don't change meeting numbers, so they can save it in their phone, they can save it on their computer, it's the same link, and they just are able to click in. I know another way that we do is we do record because we do not allow people to miss continually, but it is going to happen. and then they feel left out. So what we do is after our personal connection time in the very beginning, I'll press record. And then we do class. And then at the very end, then I'll if we're going to talk again personally, then I turn the record off. But what this does is that person that has a doctor appointment or has something is able to go attend the doctor's appointment. They're able to watch the recorded Zoom, and then they complete the homework. I ask them different things. Then I'll be like, so, hey, what did you feel about this section? Hey, can you complete these questions? And they do not lag behind, and I've had people that have gotten jobs. How depressing would that be to have you're in getting ahead, you do what you're supposed to do, and you get a job. And so it allows, and I did have a gentleman with 2 children that did get a job during getting ahead, but he was so excited to watch. He's like, hey, can I get the recording? Hey, can I get the recording? Because he was already like maybe 9 weeks in. So he definitely wanted to. And I did have another one too. So Kim, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, when you were talking about the intimacy and getting to know each other, I know that was a concern for a lot of people starting out. But they really connect. And I think sometimes, Phil Duvall said it during one of our Thursday meetings, sometimes people might feel a little bit more secure in their home. And so they're able to kind of venture out a little bit more, maybe do a little more reading than they would have done, state an opinion, things like that. So I have not noticed any lag in people getting to know each other. Today, I almost had to say, hey guys, we got to get back to class, because a couple of the mamas were wanting to share baby clothes with a couple of the other mamas, and they were working that all out. So no, they do so well. They just adapt to situations really, really well. They're very flexible.
I think that's we are so happy with virtual. Like we said, we are going, when we continue and say this goes away, there's going to always be a need now virtually to some degree, that we see that this has really broken down those barriers and has opened it up to so many more people, and we're so happy.
Thank you. Good to hear about all the stuff that's happening in Pueblo. Thanks for sharing. I know that there are other places around the US, and so it's good just to hear some of the stories. I am going to invite Stephen McDonald from Toledo, Ohio, to come on. And Stephen, let me switch over a few things and we'll get you so you can share information. And I believe you have a PowerPoint that you're going to be sharing with us.
I do. And so let me...
Yeah, you're welcome to share that. And again, our goal is really to share information, to hear what's going well in some communities, and hopefully to get people thinking about ways that they can continue on with getting ahead in their community. All right, Stephen.
Okay, well, I want to thank my colleagues from Muskogee and Pueblo, and I agree with everything that they said. So in terms of the only thing I had to add was that if you can build authenticity and connection and relationship with your getting ahead investigators and facilitators in person, you can do it online. It just takes a little effort and getting some new techniques developed. But I wanted to share this piece. My focus today is going to be on how we do some of the mental models, because one of my big questions was, at the end of a getting ahead class, we have 35 flip chart papers plastered around the room, like for multiple mental models. And how do you translate those mental models, and how do you use them with the getting ahead class? So online. So AHA process is developing some of these that you're looking at right now. This is the the prototypes. So I'm going to show some of those and then show how I adapt those when I'm doing a class. So it is nice, as Treasure said, to have some of these graphics up there so that you can just, kind of cement that image with people as they're looking in the book. You're in the right place. The picture symbolizes what you're going to do in that module. And then there's the question of, so I simulated this. We actually do this. We do all our meetings on Zoom. And I'm going to simulate a little bit of how we do the mental model of poverty on a whiteboard in Zoom. This is actually in a PowerPoint presentation, but it looks kind of similar. But basically, you label the top of the whiteboard as mental model of poverty, and you get a circle on the page, and you set it up the way you normally do. And usually what I like to do is, I'm usually the person in the background. So we have the facilitator who's creating the mental model of poverty with the Getting Ahead investigators. And what's usually one of the first things in the top 3 that people say is an issue, is something that you have to cover when you're living in poverty, when you're under-resourced. Frequently they say transportation. So as I'm leading this or somebody else is leading it, we have another person who's filling in, typing this in on the whiteboard in Zoom. So they're just typing it in real time. And I animated this, but you just type it in real time. So you fill out the mental model of poverty. You just add them to the circle, right? And I'm just going to go through these quick. That's the initial phase of the mental model of poverty. And this will take a long time to do, right? Like what I just did, that's going to take 15 to 20 minutes at least without much discussion, where you just, you're talking, people are thinking out loud, they're contributing, they're asking questions, you're adding detail to this, people are telling a story, right? But they create this piece of the mental model of poverty on the whiteboard. And then that's actually what a recent one looked like. This was the last class where we, it gets a little sloppy. We're getting better at it, but people really understand it. It's very real, and they work through the mental model of poverty as far as you get. At some point, we switch over to the more standard version so that you can demonstrate some other things. And I understand that in different communities, people present this in a different way. So, but one of the ways we usually do it is to talk about, we give an example of a parent who has a couple children, and they've, one's in preschool and one's in the second grade, and they've got to get their child to preschool and to elementary school, and they've got to get themselves to work, and they've been written up. They go out, their car doesn't start. They get everybody ready, they get them in the car, and the car doesn't start. A fire breaks out in the transportation area. And then what else is affected? So, you set that up, but from then it's pretty much you're following the investigator's lead, and you ask them, what other areas, you're all familiar with this, so I'm just going to go through it quickly, but children are affected, and childcare is affected, and jobs, and housing, right? And debt. And then people are spending more time on agency time, and their mental health might be affected, and before long, the whole picture goes up in flames, right? So we use some animations to help illustrate the point, and this point obviously is, that tyranny of the moment, right? And then how do you survive? Through relationships. When people get to that point in the conversation, you can kind of predict where things are going to go. and you can start to lay out the key points. And a couple of the key points are that concrete, you want to mention that, and the tyranny of the moment. And then, you know, you can do these. The key thing is that you really have it based in the investigators creating this, and you're focusing on what they're talking about, but you can anticipate where it's going to go. And later, when you're dealing with the causes of poverty, you come back to this mental model and you review it and you bring up businesses. And again, you can annotate on a slide, or you can put this on a whiteboard where you identify the businesses and you have people identify what are all the businesses. And again, I'm doing this really fast, but this is a long discussion where you're following their lead and putting the businesses on the board that are concerned to them. And then you fill out the mental model, and this is your mental model. And I'm going to show you what we do with this in a little bit as well. This is, I just wanted to show this as an example of a whiteboard. This is an actual whiteboard we did for agency approaches to change, where we just ask the questions. We set it up. What are the organizations that you go to when you need to get your needs met? And we kind of categorize it based on food and housing and children and childcare and mental health and transportation. We break it up into that area. You may do this in a different way, but we get all these organizations listed. And then, you know, as you know, as a facilitator, the questions are, which one of these agencies requires a plan for change? Or they ask what's your plan for change? Which one has a plan for change for you? And which one's sanctioned? So you use whatever symbols. I think in this it was the green was the agencies where they ask you what your plan for change is, and the X was do they give you a plan? The star was, do they sanction? So you get that information, and then you can you can pretty it up a little bit. So I'm just gonna escape from this for a second and get into another one, because the other question then becomes, how do you deal with your flip chart papers? Because for me as a facilitator and for the investigators, I've heard numerous reports that those mental models are so profound. One of the first mental models we do, and this is not, I know around the country people have traditions and ways of setting the tone. And one of the things we ask first off is, what are the character qualities you have that you're proud of? And that becomes mental model number one, which we label. The idea here is that periodically, like every other class or so, we've got a slideshow where we review the mental models. And we're also moving to doing our Getting Ahead classes through Google Classroom. So the notion is that these mental models are there so the class members can look at them and review them there as well. There's kind of a base for those mental models that they developed to be housed, or that we used. So again, this is, initially we simulated the white paper of the flip chart paper as a mental model. So another one is that we use is, who do you want to make the world safe for? We actually have people identify individuals that they in particular want to make the world safe for, and then we ask them to create a drawing or have a photograph or have an image. One of the investigators in our class brought a little doll. It was like an action figure that his granddaughter, he wanted to make the world safe for his granddaughter, and his granddaughter had actually hit him in the mouth with this little doll and actually bloodied his lip. And he realized that when he just, you know, when you get struck like that by a pet or a child and you're initially there's this angry reaction, and he had that angry reaction, but then he just was overcome with a sense of love for his granddaughter. And he brought that little toy as a symbol of his love for his granddaughter. And what we do then is when we get to this places where change is hard, you know, you're not just making that change for yourself. You're making that change for this person that you want to make the world safe for. And that's a powerful symbol. But that's a mental model that we do. We also have the class agreements, and we have, and this is where we did this on our own, but this is one that I think would be great to have from AHA Process as well, that could potentially be animated. We'll see where that goes. To really do that triangle, which, you know, is on page 2 of the workbook, and then the mental model of poverty. So I just wanted to show a few of those and this is another one that we do uniquely. We just found it's useful to also know what your specific rent to income level is. So those are the slides, and basically the notion is, again, these mental models we review periodically, so they're cumulative, and you can just go through them quickly. Another thing that we sometimes do is ask, investigators what their favorite mental model is, and to kind of talk about that. So that is how we have figured out how to do the to bring those flip chart papers into life online.
Thank you, Stephen. It's been great listening to all of these examples and how you've worked through some of the different issues. So I want to thank all of you again for sharing. I have asked Treasure to bring up again the last couple of slides, just so that we can make sure that everyone knows that they are able to access information on a landing page with AHA Process. So you can go and look at the information, download. If you have questions, you're welcome to contact me, Lynn Jackson. And if I don't know the answer, then I will work at finding one for you. Again, good luck. We want Getting Ahead to continue. We know virtual is going to be the way to go for a while. And as you've heard today, it could be that there will always be a blend as we move forward of in-person and virtual trainings. So thank you again, everyone who shared. And I'm glad that we were able to give some information to others that are eager to learn about what the options are.